That was beautiful. Thank you very much for playing us in. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Journeys with Judy. We have traveled to Middletown, Pennsylvania tonight to sit with Julie Moffitt. As you can tell, she is a musician, author, teacher, Reiki sound and sound therapy practitioner. We're going to find out more about her journey. Thank you for having us in your beautiful home.
Oh, thank you for coming. Appreciate it.
It's great to be here. You've watched the show.
I have.
So you know where we start nice and easy.
Mm-hmm.
Where were you born and raised?
I was born in Mechanicsburg and lived there till I was, well, actually, I lived there till I was 26. Sometimes in town, sometimes out in the country.
Mm-hmm.
But it was always a Mechanicsburg address.
Okay.
So.
Excellent. Do you have any siblings?
I have one sister. She's 6 years older than me.
Does she live local? Is she?
She does. She lives in Hummelstown.
Okay.
Which is very nice because I'm very fond of her. And we're really close. So so it's nice to have her close.
Excellent. Very good. How would you best describe your childhood?
A lot went on.
Okay.
But the things that linger with me, I think the most are, well, first of all, I mean, I started playing piano at a really young age. So I was, I started taking piano lessons when I was 3.
Oh, wow.
My father played the piano, my older sister was taking lessons, and so I was around it all the time. So a lot of my memory of my childhood is playing. Because that's like all I cared about, pretty much.
Okay.
But because for a lot of that time I lived in the country, I also remember being outdoors a lot, and I've done some writing about that, just because when I look back on that time, that's what I think about. I think about like all the times I spent walking in the woods, and connecting with the plants and birds and insects, and I like insects. What can I say? But a lot of music.
Okay.
A lot of music.
Now, your dad was musical, your sister was your mom as well?
No.
No.
She claimed to me that she used to sing when she was younger, but she had just sort of stopped.
Huh.
So I think she sang to me when I was a baby.
Okay.
Like some lullabies and stuff.
Right. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So, were you one of those families that sat around the piano every night and sang? And
Not every night, but we did it quite a bit.
Yeah?
Yeah. And I think partly because, all 4 of my grandparents were born in the 1880s. And because it seemed like everybody, it seems like all the people in my family had kids really late.
Mm.
So my mom was 40 when I was born.
Okay.
And her mom was, I think, in her 30s when she was. So there was like a long time between the generations. And so when I was growing up in the 1960s, there was a lot of stuff around us that was kind of 19th century. And it was really common in the 19th century after dinner for everybody to gather, in the drawing room or something, and everybody would play music, and that's kind of what we did.
That's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't every night, but my dad played almost every night, and so I'd often go in and we'd play duets and stuff, or he wrote some songs, and so he'd play, or he wrote arrangements of some other songs, and so he'd play them and I'd sing them. It was really cool.
That is very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we might have touched on that. What is your fondest childhood memory? Sounds like you just...
Well, gosh, I don't know. I mean, I also had a horse, and I loved horseback riding. Probably my answer to that question is different today than it would have been like when I was 15.
Okay. Uh-huh.
Having just said that to you about my dad, so my dad died when I was 23. He died of cancer. And that was absolutely devastating for me. It was because he was so connected to the music.
Mm-hmm.
For me that, like, for a while, like every time I go to the piano to play, I'd just start crying.
I was gonna say, were you?
Which was bad because I was in music college at the time and I was supposed to be practicing.
Oh wow!
But so if off the top of my head, if I thought about it longer, I might come up with something else. But off the top of my head, I'd say probably playing music with my dad.
Okay. That's a good one.
It's certainly up there. In the top 5.
I think that's a really good one. What was challenging for you as a child? I mean, it sounds like you had
I had a great childhood. My parents were wonderful people. They were very encouraging. They were smart, and my mother's attitude was, you can do anything you want to if you put your mind to it, which I've carried with me ever since. And my dad never said that out loud, but he was kind of the same way. And so I felt really nurtured at home, and they, I wanted to take, they gave me the music lessons before I was even old enough to ask for them. but when I wanted to take ballet lessons, they gave me ballet lessons, and I wanted to take horseback riding. They really tried to broaden my horizons, particularly if I was interested. And I mean, they never fought. They were very civil. They weren't very emotionally demonstrative. I mean, in the morning when my dad left, my mom worked too, but when they separated, it would be like, "Have a good day, dear," and that was it. So I mean, I saw my mom cry like 3 times in my whole life. So, and 2 of them were after my dad died.
Gotcha. Okay.
But a real challenge for me was getting along with other people. I was really bright, and I was unfortunately really full of myself because of it. And I was very self-confident about my abilities, and people didn't like that. But I was also very sensitive, and when I talk to other people, they're like, "Oh yeah, man, my childhood sucked." And so I used to think it was just me because everybody thought I was a weirdo.
Right.
But I think a lot of other people go through that because there's a lot of that, oh, she's a weirdo, he's a weirdo stuff going on. And so I think the more sensitive children feel really persecuted, and I was very sensitive. So, I didn't have many friends growing up.
So school was a challenge?
School was great. I loved school.
You loved school?
I loved going to school because I love to learn.
Right.
Hence all of the books.
All the books. We were talking about that.
Yes. So I loved going to school. I loved to learn. I loved most of my teachers. I just didn't like my classmates because
that's what I was going to say. It was difficult for you.
They made fun of me, for whatever they could make fun of me for, and I took it to heart.
Right.
So, and what I find quite ironic is that, particularly in high school, because I was really delving into my creative stuff. I was playing music. I was writing poetry. I was doing some acting, which I'm terrible at, but I loved it. And and people made fun of me because they thought I was weird. And now the things that people admire about me are the things they made fun of me for when I was like 17. And I'm thinking, okay, this is an odd turnaround. I didn't really see this coming.
Well, the fact that you continue to pursue your interest, even though you were singled out as weird and whatever.
Well, I did have some. I mean, I didn't have a lot of friends, but I'd hang out with other people who played music, or I'd hang out with other people who did theater, and so I had a few, at least, acquaintances who were like-minded,
right?
And people probably thought they were all weird.
I was going to say you hung out with other weird people.
That's
too.
right. Yeah.
Okay, so that carried you through your teenage years. What about when you were a young adult? You said that your dad died when you were 23, so that's...
Yeah, when I got out of high school, I went to college immediately. My parents were like, "Oh no, everybody goes to college,"
Well, and being so smart, how could you not?
Well, there are a lot of smart people who didn't go to college, but no, I wanted to go, but I didn't know what I wanted to study at that time. I was really interested in. I had learned to play the guitar. So I started piano when I was really young. I started learning to play the guitar when I was like 11.
Okay.
And I was really getting into that, and that was kind of the avenue that took me into popular music, because I played some popular music on the piano, but I mostly played classical and show tunes. And so I wanted to be in a band, and so the thing I was really focused on when I graduated from high school was how can I practice the guitar more and practice the piano more and get better at this. But my mom wanted me to go to college right away because, for one thing, she was afraid if I didn't go, I'd never go back. But she also, she had multiple sclerosis, and which she had pretty much since about when I was 1 year old. And it was amazing. It only affected her from the waist down.
Oh, wow.
So it never affected her brain. Later on in life, she had some numbness in her fingertips, but heck, so do a lot of 80-year-olds,
Right.
So, and she wasn't sure when she was going to have to retire, and she wanted to pay for my college, and so she said, I really want you to go now because I don't know if I'll be able to pay for it later. And I said, okay. So I went, and I wasn't ready. And I went to class for a week and a half, and then I sat in my room all the time and practiced the guitar and wrote poetry.
Uh-oh. Where did you go to school?
I went to Elizabethtown College.
Okay.
They had a music therapy program, which I thought I might be interested in. But I really wasn't ready for... I was kind of in that rebellious stage. I wasn't ready. For one thing, you don't get any of the music therapy classes until your third year. So I was taking like music theory, and they were telling me the right way to do things, and I was like, you know how it is when you're like 18.
Being
like,
the rebel.
Right. You're like, well, that's the way we're supposed to do it, but why? And I don't want to do it that way. And, I was just an idiot. But but I was right. I wasn't ready.
Right.
And I finally called my mom about a month into the semester, and I said, this isn't really working out. And I told her what I had been doing, and she said, I should have listened to you. You said you weren't ready. And clearly you won't. So I didn't go back to music college until... I'm back to college. I took some classes at PAC, just because I like taking classes and I like learning stuff, but I didn't have a goal in mind. And early in the 1980s, I had a lot of trouble reconciling my popular music side with my classical music side. I felt like I was living a dual life almost, because there's such a divide between them, or at least in some people's minds.
Right.
And I didn't know how to define myself. And then I discovered Emerson, Lake and Palmer, which is a ELP, progressive rock band from the 1970s.
Okay.
Keith and they all went to Juilliard, which is like one of the best music schools in the world.
Right.
But they were playing progressive rock, and I started listening to their albums, and I was like, and I was like, I want to be like Keith Emerson when I grow up. And I thought, okay, that's it. I'm going to go to college and really
found it.
And really study piano.
Okay.
So I went to a small college in Philly, and because I had some classes already, and because I had a lot of music background, there were a lot of things I was able to test out of. So I did my bachelor's degree in 2 years.
Oh wow.
And then I didn't want to leave. I wanted to stay and study with my piano teacher, who was awesome, for another year. So I thought, well, all right, I'll get a master's degree, even though I never intended to get a master's degree. I just wanted to stay for another year. So I ended up with a master's degree in piano performance.
Wow.
So that's my degree.
Now, how long a time was it between Elizabethtown? You telling Mom no, I can't do this, to you going back?
It was like 5 or 6 years.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Now,
I did play in some bands.
Okay.
During
That's
that
what
time,
I was gonna ask.
and I did a lot of performing and stuff, solo, acoustic guitar and playing in bars, back when they were smoky. Yeah. So.
Okay.
Yes.
So what would you? That covers your young adulthood. What do you find challenging now?
Finding time to do all the cool things I want to do. I'm in a really good place in my life. One of the big goals I had in my mind was to live in the country again. I grew up in the country. I lived in town for almost 30 years, and while I liked living in town, I liked the advantages of it. I felt like I was not at home, And we bought this land and we built this house, and even though we've been here for 5 years, every morning I wake up, I pull the curtain, I look out the window, and I go, "Oh my God, I'm home." Yeah. It's so amazing. That's actually what helped get me through cancer. Which I know you'll come back to.
Yes.
But I feel like I've got a really good balance in my life. For a while I was really uncomfortable with my music career because I didn't feel like I was famous enough or that I was making enough money, and so I felt sort of like I was a failure, and I wanted to pursue some healing stuff and some spiritual stuff, and I never took the time to do that. And I feel like there's a really good balance. So there are challenges, but I don't feel like there's one looming thing that's like an albatross hanging around my neck.
Okay,
You
so
know?
you no longer feel like the weirdo?
No, I don't. Well, and the truth is, if you live with yourself for this many years, I don't even seem weird to myself anymore. So maybe I do to other people, because every now and then somebody will say, you're not quite right, are you? Or you're not quite like other people. And I'll be like, yeah, I'll grant you that.
And that's something to be proud of.
I think so.
Absolutely.
I think so, yeah.
That means
Deborah is watching, and she's like, "I'm Julie's friend."
Hi, Deborah.
You find your people.
that's
You
right.
do.
You find your tribe.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. What jobs have you had to this point?
Well, the various gigs, playing
Right.
in bars, playing in, and I did for many years. I did, I had an agent, and they'd send me to corporate things, and I did weddings, and I hate weddings. I won't play weddings anymore.
Okay.
Because I had a nightmare gig at a wedding, and I was like, that's it, no more weddings. But so I had a number of different things, some real good things. I mean, I was in this acoustic duo, and we opened up for Eddie Money.
Oh, wow.
And for the Little River Band.
Ooh,
So we got
yeah.
some, really auspicious things. But I just had sort of, a lot of times I had like piecemeal jobs here and there, to supplement my income because I wasn't making enough money doing gigs.
Right.
And I really didn't start teaching in earnest until my late 20s. And so that wasn't really much of a source of revenue.
Mm-hmm.
So I worked at a health food store for a while. That was fun. And I worked for Walden Books, if anybody remembers Walden Books, for 10 years, and loved it because, yeah.
We're surrounded by books.
Yes. And that was an awesome job. And I actually worked in a used paperback store for a while too, and that was really fun. But back in 1992, I thought, I gotta make the leap. I gotta make the leap. And by then I was teaching enough that I had a meager income.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, I gotta take this leap of faith and believe that if I don't have a fallback job, and at that point I was working at a health food store, so I wasn't getting paid very much, but it was like security.
Right.
And I thought, I gotta take this leap of faith and believe that I can make enough money as a musician, doing the various music things I do. So I quit my job, and a week later, Hack called me. Well, I had sent a resume in, this was like in August. I had sent a resume back in February, and they acknowledged that they had gotten it, but they had never contacted me. So I thought, oh well, that's water under the bridge. Nope. I took my little leap, and they called me. Somebody had quit 10 days before the semester started.
Oh no.
10 days before the semester started, they had lost a teacher for a class. It's like a music appreciation class.
Mm-hmm.
And the dean called me up and practically hired me on the phone.
Wow.
Because he was desperate.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, well, I guess I ought to have you in for an interview. And I went in there, and he showed me the textbook, and he said, can you do this? And I said, sure. I said, I got to tell you, I've never done this before, and because I actually applied to be a piano teacher.
Okay.
I didn't apply to teach class.
Right.
And he said, oh, how hard can it be? You have a master's degree. And I thought, this is how college professors get hired? But I guess supposedly under desperate circumstances, that's how they get hired sometimes.
Yes.
I mean, I was literally one day ahead of the class the whole semester. Like, I'd come home and I would frantically do research for the next chapter in the book, and I'd go and stand in front of them and think, please let these notes take me to the end of class.
So did you wind up enjoying that?
I did.
Excellent.
I did. It was, and it was so funny because I'd spent so much of my life on stage already, and the first day in front of that class, I was terrified. I was like, but over the years, I've been there 25 years now, and I really like it. I really like teaching the students, and I really like the students, and I like the feedback I get from them, and I don't like the administrative stuff so much, but and I do actually teach lessons.
I was going to say, do you teach more than just music?
I do teach. I teach private piano lessons. Over the years, I proposed a class in the history of rock.
Ooh.
I taught that for a few years, and people really enjoyed it. But and then we have music theory classes, so I've taught those as well.
Okay.
And I enjoy that because a lot of the people who take those are aspiring musicians, and so I have something in common with them. So that's pretty cool.
Excellent. Very cool. Huh. Okay. So currently you teach lessons, you teach class at Hack. Do you teach private lessons here?
I do. This is my studio.
Okay.
Which we designed and built and it's at the opposite end of the house from my husband's room. Yeah, so I teach piano, I teach guitar, and I teach voice.
Okay. And how long have you been doing that personal? Private lessons?
Oh, since I was in my late 20s.
Late 20s?
So,
Okay.
yeah, decades. I'm older than I look. A long time. Yeah.
Okay.
So, but I love that too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in fact, so I know I keep bringing up the cancer thing, but you know, the one thing when I was on chemotherapy,
Mm-hmm.
pretty much the one time that I didn't think, oh, I'm doing chemotherapy or I feel like crap is when I was teaching lessons.
Wow.
It was just like that was all I cared about.
You're in the zone.
You know, yeah, it was very
took
cool.
you away. Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Very nice. So maybe this will lead into it. Maybe you start. When did you begin your spiritual journey? I mean, has music always had a connection with you spiritually?
Funny you should ask that question. I would say that music has always been transcendent for me.
Okay.
I went through a stage right after I got my master's degree, or right before I got my master's degree, actually. I started having really bad trouble with tendonitis. I do have carpal tunnel syndrome, but back then that wasn't bothering me.
Mm-hmm.
But I had this really bad tendonitis, and I had to stop playing.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but I was like almost done with college, and so when I was done, I faced a life of not being a musician,
Wow.
which was nothing I had ever
Even
thought of
imagine,
before. Yeah,
right.
I was 24, and I was like, what do I do now? You know, I mean, sometimes people will say to me, when did you decide that you were going to be a professional musician? And my answer is like, what?
when I was 3.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, I mean,
It's
it never
always
it was
been?
yeah, it was a no-brainer. I mean, I thought about, you know, what would it be like to have this other job or, you know, interesting things, but that was always a given, that I would be a performer. And took me a while.
What do you do then?
Yeah, and so, well, I had always been a writer.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I had written poetry, and I tried to write some songs, but I was really bad at it. And so I started writing in earnest. And I started writing some short stories and some more poetry and that sort of thing. So for about 3 years, I didn't play any music.
Nothing.
No. And every time I would try, like, it would hurt. So
Right.
I would stop. And I realized that at that point that it was music that made my life seem more than just passing the time until you die.
Wow.
You know, that was sort of the transcendent thing for me. And so I suppose you could say that it's connected to my spirituality. I didn't see it that way at the time, you know, but I guess I do see it that way now.
Now, why did you suck as a songwriter back then?
I didn't really have any skill. I knew enough about what constitutes good lyrics to try to write lyrics and go, oh, that was a terrible rhyme. Or you just put that word in there because it rhymes, but it doesn't have anything to do with the mean. You know what I mean?
Right.
They weren't hideous, but they weren't what I wanted them to be.
Okay.
You know. So the good thing that actually came out of the 3 years of not playing music was that I really honed my writing skills.
Perfect.
And and so by the time I got to my early 30s, and by then I had started playing music again, but by the time I decided to take my hand at, or, you know, try my hand at songwriting again, I was like, oh, well, now I have these skills, and I think I was pretty good at it, you know.
Did you find you had more life experience to write about? I mean, that 3
well,
years
there's
of
that
you
too.
not being able to play was...
Sure. I mean, there's always... Yeah, but I don't write songs anymore because I don't have anything to say. I mean, I have plenty of things to say,
How is that possible?
Right, I have plenty of things to say, but I don't feel like expressing them through that medium.
Through music. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I write... I'm more likely to write instrumental stuff at this point. At this point, and I've done some of that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Well,
yeah, it's a different. It just takes a different, way of doing it.
Yeah.
But
And that's therapeutic as well.
yeah,
Absolutely. Okay. So you've been able to look back and make that connection. When would you say you started, how did you start your spiritual journey?
Well, my father was an atheist.
Oh.
And my mother,
Okay.
and like a rabid atheist. Oh, it's all a bunch of claptrap, he'd say.
Claptrap.
They're all a bunch of, what was the word he used? Well, it's just a crutch. Religion is just a crutch, he would say. So, this after we went to church. Well, my parents were really forward thinking. My mom was like totally a woman's liber, and like, I mean, she was in the army and taught instrument flying in the early 40s, like in the Second World War. So she was a traveling saleswoman in the 1930s. She was like, yeah, she totally rocked. So they were progressive in that way, but they were also very proper in some ways. You know, there are certain ways you must act, and there are certain things that just aren't done. Mm-hmm. You know, and so they, like, when we were younger, my sister and I, when we were younger, they took us to church because that's sort of what you're supposed to do with your kids. Mm-hmm. You know, and that's what their parents had done. You know, and but somewhere along the line, we just stopped going. And my mom had a sort of vague sense that maybe there was a higher power, but she didn't have any kind of interest in becoming a member of any other, of having somebody else tell her a bunch of dogma and becoming a member of a congregation. She did finally, in her 60s, I think, she joined the Unitarian Church. Okay. Because at the Unitarian Church, you can be an atheist, you can be a Catholic, you can be Jewish, you can be a Muslim, it doesn't matter. Yeah. Yeah. I played for them for a while, for one of the Unitarian churches, for their services, yeah. But, so I think my first interest, at least in organized religion, was in trying to refute it. You know, okay. I used to read books about Christianity and about how certain things could have happened, and scholarly looks at it and that sort of thing. But, you know, slowly, of course, since I was reading that and I was starting to read philosophy, I sort of delved out into Zen Buddhism and, you know, and I tried a bunch of different stuff. And by the time I was maybe in my mid-teens, or mid to late teens, I had this feeling that maybe like my mom, that there was something bigger than me, but I didn't think it was a deity. Mm-hmm. But I thought, I did sort of, without realizing how Zen Buddhist it was of me, I had the sense that everybody was connected. That we were, you know, and that was before I'd even heard of, like, Gaia.
Wow.
You know, I just thought that, yeah, it's all like one thing, one organism, sort of, you know. And, I mean, I have refined that over the years. And I sort of let go of it for a while, but, because I can remember when I saw the first Star Wars movie, I was like, the Force, you know. And now I'm like, cool. But so, yeah, that's kind of what I think I came to, because I had sort of a crisis during my high school years, trying to figure out what I believed was true and what I didn't. You know, and I wanted an answer. Right. And really what I've come to now, although I still feel like we're all connected and, you know, and I know all about quantum entanglement too, so it gets even more complicated on a physics level where we really are all connected. And because I read books like The Dancing Wooly Masters, and you know what I'm talking about. Okay, there are a lot of things in physics about a lot of things in quantum physics and about the way the world works that corroborates the idea that we actually are connected, because quantum particles are jumping back and forth between us. Okay. You didn't think I was going to go there, did you?
No, but that's great. I hope Stacy's watching.
I was just going to say it's hysterical that Rosemary just recently joined.
Oh, no, that's perfect.
So, I finally, and I'm not sure where I finally came to this, but I finally came to a realization that instead of wanting to know what the answer was, that was being closed-minded. Okay. If you choose an answer, right, then you never see any other possibility.
Absolutely.
You know, and so I've decided, it used to make me so uncomfortable to not have the answer, you know, and now I feel like I'm moving through knowledge, and I'm learning new things, and every time I learn something new, it expands my view. And I have sort of a general, like I said, a generalized view of what I believe.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm always willing to go, well, I never thought of that, and look, I mean, so I'm
You're continuously willing to grow and expand.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yes,
perfect.
I wish some scientists were more like that. Well, because there's a lot. I just read this awesome book. Can I get up and show you this book?
Sure.
I just read this amazing book called, I won't make this go too long, okay, called Energy Medicine by James Oshman, who is a scientist.
Mm-hmm.
And it is like the scientific basis for energy work. It's amazing. I mean, there's a bunch of physics in here, and there's like mechanics and magnetism and electromagnetism, and it is heavily researched. The print is extremely
She has it marked many times.
There's a
Yes.
couple of tabs there.
Just
the
a
print
few.
is so tiny that I couldn't even use my reading glasses. I had to take my glasses off to. Yeah, it took
is
me a
very
while
tiny.
to slide through that.
Wow.
And there's a lot I missed, but but still. But I was very excited to read it because there are some scientists who are like, "Oh no, this is totally true. This is totally real."
Right. Excellent. Okay, so, I mean, that's some pretty in-depth thinking for a teenager.
Why, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. And to have, yeah. I mean, I was a teenager and it just, wanting to get through high school.
Well, yeah, I wanted to get through high school too.
And
but,
I didn't
yeah.
spend my time thinking that deeply, but that's okay.
Well,
that's why I sit here.
Right. I spent a lot of time by myself too, because I didn't have very many friends.
Okay.
So, what do? You read and you practice the guitar. And
Okay.
Write
Okay, so
poetry.
that's when you were a teenager.
Well, a lot of what
So loosely, and then you've evolved.
Yeah, I mean, some of that
into
evolution
this,
was
right,
later.
right.
Was later. Yeah.
Is there a pinpoint? Was there something that was, they call them soul boots that beat you in the butt that said, investigate more?
I think just over the years, my interest in learning more about it, and as I learned more about spirituality and energy work
Mm-hmm.
and sort of the world around me, it just became more and more a thing that was part of me.
Okay.
There weren't really any like aha moments. I do remember one time I was driving down a hill and a squirrel ran out in front of my car. Bam! Killed it. Super dead.
Mm-hmm.
Well, at least it was instantaneous. I pulled off the road. I know it was a bird. It was a bird. Doesn't matter. A creature.
Mm-hmm.
It was a bird. I pulled off the road. I picked it up and I put it at the side of the road. And I thought, I need something. I need some kind of ritual or some way of framing this to make myself feel better.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't make the bird feel any better, but I don't know how to look at this, and I should. I should find a thing I can say that I don't know, will somehow not necessarily be palliative, but will just remind me of the way I frame things.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I still feel just as bad if I hit a creature on the road,
Right.
but I have a better sense of like sometimes I will apologize to it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't call any spirits or anything, but I'll remind myself that this is the way of all things, and they have to die sometime, and I'm going to die someday, and
Right.
and although I still feel bad for that praying mantis whose head I shaved off with the weed whacker.
Ooh.
There are some of those things you just kind of go, okay, that one was really icky. But it's, I mean, so many creatures live by killing other creatures. I mean, it's just the way of things,
Right.
and I had to come to terms with that. But yeah.
Okay. You brought up modalities. Are you trained in any healing modalities?
I am. I took Reiki training, Reiki 1 and Reiki 2.
Mm-hmm.
I have yet to do my Reiki Master. And at first I didn't want to. I actually took Reiki because I was interested in sound healing.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't have, at the time there was a Reiki 1 class, I didn't have any options for any kind of sound healing classes.
Okay.
You know, and I thought, well, this is kind of in the same ballpark. It's energy work. It's, you know, working with the chakras,
Right.
and so I took it, and I liked it, and
I call it my gateway drug.
yes, it's my gateway drug. And so after a while, I thought, you know, I'll go back and do Reiki 2,
Mhm.
and then I did Reiki 2, and then I thought, oh, but I don't need to be a Reiki master. I got what I needed, and now that some time has gone by, I'm like, no, I should probably do that. So.
You're a natural born teacher. It wouldn't
I
be a bad
am.
thing for
I
you to have.
am. And, yeah, and I never thought that would happen, but I do love to teach.
Yeah. Well, you have a lot to share on many different levels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
You do. Okay, so you have the Reiki 2. Anything else?
No, just the sound healing.
What do you mean just the sound?
Well, the sound healing. Well, because I already said it.
But that's okay. Say it again. You are a Reiki sound and sound therapy practitioner.
Yes.
So talk to us about Reiki sound.
So Reiki sound is, well, it's just a combination of using, so sound, obviously, sound healers use the bowls and drums, and various little things that make noise, gongs, anything that, you know, the idea, and I'm sure most of your watchers know this, the idea is that certain sounds are healing for certain reasons. So it's not like music therapy, where you play music,
Right.
you know, for the client. You just you pick different frequencies, tuning forks, that kind of thing, and direct certain sounds toward the client or toward certain places. But what I do in a Reiki sound session, I mean, some Reiki sound practitioners just do Reiki, but like do sound throughout. I tend to do it at the beginning and the end, so that the Reiki part is, I mean, I play drifting music in the background. It's sort of like meditation music in the background, but so that the Reiki part is really nearly silent, you know, except for a little bit of drifty background music, so that you're really conscious of the energy work. So I do sounds at the beginning and sounds at the end, and sometimes I'll do, like this particular bowl is a Peter Hess bowl, and it's not meant to be, I mean, you can strike it, but it doesn't make a very good, it doesn't do that very well. But they really, really vibrate. Put that in your right hand. Oops. They vibrate forever and ever and ever. And so you can put them on the clients. So I tend to put them, like if somebody's having back problems, I'll have them put it on their back and strike it. I actually have a better striker than this to do it. It's more like a gong striker, so it's softer. But it really is like,
Yeah, it really does.
it's still going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So.
It's still going.
Yeah. So yeah, and sometimes, I mean, I'll do chanting. You know, we use our voices a lot in sound, and so I'll do that maybe at the end of the Reiki session. You know.
Okay.
So.
How long have you been doing Reiki sound?
3 years. 3 years. Yeah, you know, I've been studying this in earnest for like 9 or 10 years, and but I couldn't take the leap. It was just a little too, even though I had experienced it and I knew it worked, it still felt a little bit like I would be one of those weirdos again. That people would be like, oh, she's like that, you know, she's or like she, you know, and so I couldn't.
You
take
go
that
back to those school days where
I couldn't take that final step and say, I do this stuff that a lot of people think is like, woo, you know. And then I got cancer.
All right, and let's go there.
Okay, and so I had already studied all this stuff, and I did a little bit of it during that period. But so with my cancer, I had 2 surgeries, chemotherapy, and then radiation.
Now, when were you diagnosed?
Early in 2015.
2015.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was done with my treatments in early 2016.
Okay.
So it was almost a full year. It was a long time.
And it was stage 3, correct?
It was stage 3A. So it's the lowest stage 3 you can get. But,
Okay.
But it had spread. It was breast cancer, and it had spread outside into the lymph nodes.
Okay.
So that's why they recommended chemotherapy. So, so as soon as, not right after my diagnosis, but as soon as I had my first surgery scheduled, I thought, okay, this is it. I've got to, I have to start exercising regularly so that my physical body is as healthy as it can possibly be. And I was already doing that. I was doing that, and I was doing yoga, and I was meditating, and I had the occasional Reiki session or sound healing session. But I thought, none of this occasional anymore. This has to become a way of life. And so I started working out 5 times a week. I do yoga 3 times. I'd run and lift weights 2 days, and then I would meditate 5 or 6 days in the week, and I would do guided imagery and affirmations, and I went for Reiki sessions and sound healing sessions, and actually never went for a Reiki sound session. But
oddly enough,
I went to the salt room a couple of times, although they recommend you don't do that when you're on chemotherapy. So when I started doing the chemo, I stopped doing that. And I even had some reflexology, it's just some various things. But, and one of the reasons I wrote the book was that, everybody who knows I'm a writer, when I was first diagnosed, they were like, oh, are you going to blog? Are you going to blog about it? And I was like, ew, no. For 2 reasons. One, I didn't want to talk about it.
Right.
But the second reason was I didn't really feel like I had anything new to add to the conversation. I thought, there are lots of people out there who have blogged about their cancer experience, and maybe mine could be useful to somebody, but, it doesn't seem like mine is any different. So they can read other people and it will be useful.
Right.
By the time I was halfway through chemotherapy, I was doing so well. I mean, I recovered from both of my surgeries. I had both of my surgeries on a Friday, and on Monday morning I was doing yoga again.
Wow.
Now, granted, I had to do a downward facing dog like this, but I just kept doing it.
Right.
And I kept doing all the other stuff. And by the time I was halfway through chemo, even my husband, the nurse practitioner, said to me, "Are you sure they're giving you enough?"
Wow.
I mean, I felt like crap. So I was like, please, don't let them give me any more. But my oncologist was really pleased with how well I was doing. Whenever you go in for a treatment, they send you for blood work first to see if your white blood cell count is in the toilet, and like if your liver enzymes are in the toilet, and that kind of thing. And often I've had a number of people tell me that when that's the case for them, that when they've gone in, they've had to postpone their next treatment. But I didn't have to postpone any of mine.
Any of them.
No. So, and I kept working. I kept working. Well, one of the things I wrote in the book was when I was facing going on chemotherapy, I wrote, well, I've taught this class with migraines. I've taught this class with a hangover. I could teach this class on chemotherapy. And I did. So, I mean, it wasn't fabulous.
Right.
Like if I leaned down to pick something up and stand up, I'd be like, so
Right.
it's nothing to sneeze at. But no, by the time I got halfway through there, I thought, you know what? Maybe I do have a story to tell. I'm doing something here that really could benefit a lot of people. So I forget when I started writing it. I don't think I started it right then because I pretty much didn't do anything while I was on chemotherapy. Except I did my work. And
I was going to say, that's not true.
Well, no,
you didn't do any writing.
I didn't do any writing. I
you go.
barely even did any reading.
Yeah.
I didn't play the piano at all.
Well, you were busy doing other things.
I was
That
busy.
energy
Yes.
Yeah,
I was busy.
that energy was going somewhere else.
I was busy being creative about being healthy. So yeah.
Well, and even though it's something you enjoy, piano playing and writing, that's output. You needed to be on input at some point because you were so busy doing other things.
Right.
So,
no, and the cool thing about doing all that stuff is that because doctor's visits and procedures were so far apart from each other, normally you would just sit around thinking, oh shit, what am I going to do?
Right.
But I was doing something every single day that was positive for my own health, and that was really empowering. That was a great thing.
And I think it's important that people pay attention to the fact that it didn't keep you from feeling like crap.
Right.
So somebody could be sitting out there going, well, then why did she keep doing it? What was the benefit?
The benefit was that if I didn't do it, if I had just taken the semester off, I would have sat around and thought, oh shit, what am I going to do?
Right.
You know, I didn't want to, I like my life. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to give my life up.
Okay. You know? What about more of combining Eastern and Western medicine? What's the benefit? What was the benefit of that?
I think I wouldn't call affirmations and guided imagery Eastern medicine, but that was just positive thinking.
Right.
You know, the energy work I think was really
the
powerful.
Energy work. Okay.
Yeah.
And what do you feel that helped you with? Did it help curb some of the side effects? Did it?
I don't know.
Okay.
I actually don't know.
All right.
Because you mean from the chemo?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I had side effects, and I don't know if they would have been worse.
Right. That's true.
You know?
You have no way of telling.
Apparently, they are worse for some people, but there was no way for me to judge how much of that was because of. I mean, I exercised all the way through chemo as well.
Wow.
You know, I mean, it wasn't easy.
Right.
You know, I mean, a 50-minute yoga routine would sometimes take me an hour and 20 minutes. You know, because I have to stop and rest. But I did it. Yeah. Yes. In fact, somebody gave me a yoga video for when you have cancer, and I watched it. and I went, "Oh God, that's too easy. I'm not doing that."
So we've talked about the book.
Okay.
Go ahead and hold it up.
Okay, this is Cancer Without Fear. Integrating complementary and alternative medicine with mainstream treatment.
Excellent. And how long has it been out?
That's a good question. March.
Since
March of this year, yes.
And where could someone get one of those?
Well, you can go to my website, which is www.juliemoffitt.com. Make sure there are 2 F's and 2 T's. Everybody leaves.
I had to keep
3 W's. I just did it with 4 W's.
Okay. and only 3 W's. Yes. And so when you get to my webpage, there are drop-down menus at the top, and one of them says store. Mm-hmm. And when you drop that down, you get CDs and you get books. And so you can do it there, and that gives you information about how to get it from me. Like how much money to send me and where to send it, but it also gives you a link to Amazon.
Perfect.
If you decide to buy it from Amazon.
I posted the link on Amazon as well.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So
yes,
for someone to read that book, what's the main message?
Well, there are lots of messages.
Okay.
Because so every now and then I'll say something like, Rule 1, there's a positive side to everything.
Excellent.
Okay?
Uh-huh.
So whenever I discovered something,
that's what you shared.
That's what I shared.
Perfect.
So
it's many.
Yes. I wrote, well, at least I won't have to shave my legs for 4 months.
That is an interesting positive.
Let's see. Cancer can be liberating. What is that? So there are little rules and little messages and
things that
things all the way through. So I don't think there's one specific thing. And I actually they're here all the way through, but then I compiled them in the back.
Oh, perfect.
Because some of them are like affirmations, and some of them are just sort of hints, like when you have no other resources, hum. Which is amazingly therapeutic. That's why mothers hum to their children. It's really soothing. So every now and then I'd have to do a procedure,
right? Where
my husband couldn't go along, because I had to be in some little room or in some little machine by myself. Like when I did radiation, oh God. There's nothing. I mean, I spent my whole life trying not to have X-rays,
right?
And then I said, sure, I'll do 30 radiation treatments, and you got to lie on this table and you're not allowed to move. And there's this really impressive machine that looks like something out of a science fiction movie, and it goes, and then you hear this, and you're like, that's the radiation. I mean, it was all I could do to not just jump up and run out of the room. Now they let you bring CDs, so I brought my favorite meditation CD, and had them play my favorite track.
Mm-hmm.
So that helped to, put me in a, but I hummed. I hummed all the way through it. I was like, and I didn't want to move because you're not supposed to move because they've mapped you so that it's perfectly where they want to hit you. And so I'm going, all the way through my radiation treatments.
Oh,
Yep.
wow. Okay,
So-
now this isn't the first book that you've written.
It's not.
So tell us about your other
Okay.
books.
So this is Keys to Life, Life's Lessons Learned at the Piano. It is, some years ago I realized as a piano teacher that I would tell my students things that would help them to play the piano better. And then I'd think, well, actually, that would help you to live your life better. Not everything. I mean, some of the stuff I tell students is, no, hold your hand this way or move your elbow
Right.
this way, and that's not going to help them with the rest of their lives. But things like sitting up straight. You actually play the piano better when you sit up straight, because body language influences emotion.
Mm.
So if you're sitting at the piano, I have students who come in and they sit at the piano, and I'm like, how can you play beautiful piano if you're like, but if you sit up straight and play, it changes your mind about what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
But that's true everywhere.
Yeah, that is
It's
really
not just
true.
It's
everywhere.
not
That is
true.
so true.
It's not just true at the piano. So these also have messages, but they're set up a little differently. It's like there's short chapters where I talk about meeting with a student and a problem the student was having,
Mm-hmm.
and what I told the student, and then I actually say how you can relate it to your life,
Mm-hmm.
and how you can use that to improve your life. And then at the end of each little segment is like an affirmation, like a take-home message, like, well, that could be related to the one I just told you. Like, you have control over how you feel,
Mm.
Mm-hmm. Or you can have a certain amount, like if you change your body language,
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay.
So there's that.
Excellent.
Yep.
And that can be found on the website as well.
Right, yeah, which can be accessed exactly the same way.
Okay. Do you have other books? I mean, you
You
got
should-
more sitting here.
I do.
so
I got
let's
stuff.
talk about
I got
it.
stuff. This is a book of poetry. I still write poetry, and this is called Bird Days because the first poem in it is called Bird Days. And I have all these poems that I amassed over the years, and some of them are bad, and some of them are mediocre, and some of them I think are pretty good. And so I hadn't really thought about self-publishing a poetry book. There has been this stigma in the publishing world that if you self-publish, it's just vanity, and everybody who does it is really a hack.
Oh.
That's not really true anymore. But it took a long time. It took, like, publishing your own music
Mhm.
took off immediately, whereas it took another 15 or 20 years for publishing your own books. And let me tell you, I've looked at some really bad self-published books.
Right.
I've also listened to some really bad self-published CDs. But but you got to take the good with the bad.
Right.
So I had a reading. Hack has a writers' conference or a writers' festival, I guess you can call it,
Mm-hmm.
every spring. And I had talked to the woman. I had happened to run into the woman who was organizing it, and mentioned to her that I had these two books.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, "Oh, well, we should have you come read," because they invite authors to come and read from their books.
Right.
And I was like, "Okay, I'll do that." And so I did. But I thought, well, I'll read some of my poetry. I thought I'll read from my two books. I'll read some poetry, and I'll sing a couple of songs.
Mhm.
Because that's my writing.
Right.
And I thought, so I can take CDs to sell. I can take these two books to sell. But if I read my poetry and somebody wants to buy my poetry, I don't have a book.
Right.
So I thought, okay. So I quick published a poetry book. I mean, I say quickly in that, it took me a while to format it and spend a lot of
Right.
time. But, I picked the poems that I thought were the best and self-published a poetry book. And you know when the copies came? 2:00 in the afternoon after my reading at 9 a.m.
No.
I was so mad. Yep.
Okay. All
So-
right. Now,
and-
what's that one?
So this is not something I have written. My sister and I co-edit a poetry journal
Oh.
called Earthshine. which there's probably a link for on my website as well. So none of these poems are by us.
Okay.
But people send us poems, and if we like them, we publish them,
Oh, that's
which is
cool.
almost never.
That's
Yeah, I mean,
almost never.
we're on. So we started this journal in 2007, and we're just about to publish volume 2.
Okay.
That's how long it took us to find enough poems that we like. But I will give this to you for free. Okay.
All right.
We've got a whole bunch of copies of it, and we've had them since like 2011, and I'm just happy to share these wonderful poems with
Okay.
other people. I gave a bunch away at the writers at the reading I did.
Oh, nice.
You know, and a bunch of people, because there were a bunch of poets there, so they all took them.
So what if there's somebody out there that wants to send you poems? How do they do that?
I'm not sure there's a link on my website for that, but there's a link for Earthshine, which has its own website.
Okay.
And up at the top of there's submission guidelines.
What's the website for Earthshine? Do you know that one?
I think it's earthshine.us.
Okay.
You can check that.
Yeah. Cool.
Is that right?
I'm checking.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah. Okay.
So-
See, now you've just told a bunch more people that you do that. You might be
do.
flooded with poems.
That's right. Yeah, we don't get that many, which is also part of the reason.
Right.
But we publish. I mean, we're listed in like the Poets Market.
That's fantastic.
You know those books called like the Writers Market
Uh-huh.
and the science fiction writers market and that sort of thing. There's one called the Poets Market that's for, and so and I think we're also listed. There's also a publication called like Small Press,
Okay.
which we would definitely be. 'Cause
Right.
Let me tell you, there's no money in poetry. Not at all. I mean, even if you got a poem published by like say the New Yorker,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they pay you more than $100.
Gotcha.
So.
Okay, so let's talk about your original music.
Okay. So.
Now, what
We blacked it up.
genre would you classify this?
I would call this singer-songwriter.
Okay.
So I'm influenced by rock, but a lot by folk rock and by folk music.
Mm-hmm.
And so, how about contemporary acoustic?
I love it.
I'm also influenced a lot by musical theater. I loved musical theater. I used to accompany musical theater,
Mhm.
and so and I love good harmonies. So there's some not so much on this first one, but on the other two there's some really more dramatic songs.
Okay.
The first one it's all guitar and me singing, and if there's anything else happening in the background,
Mhm.
I did the overdubs. So there's some 3-part harmony.
Nice.
That was really. There's nothing more fun than singing harmony with yourself in the studio. Well, I'm sure there are more things that are more fun. But this was my melancholy period. Every song on here except one is in a minor key. But I think the poetry is really good. Sometimes when you're melancholy, the poetry is good.
Yes. Well, Pink says
Yes.
if she wasn't pissed off most of her life, she wouldn't have any hit songs.
And of course, these are available on the website under store
Mhm.
and CDs.
Perfect.
And you can listen. You can listen to clips. So this one, I released this in 1995.
Ooh,
Yeah, it
all right.
makes me feel old. This came out in 2001. This is Dancer, Demon, Lover, Answer. Because
Okay.
there's a song where I say those words over and over again. And this has one very dramatic piano piece on it. And then the rest are all guitar and singing. And I actually hired some people to do some background work. So there's some drums in a couple pieces, and there's some flute, and I think that's it. But anyway,
Nice.
and this came out in 2007. This is called Cover to Cover, and most of the things on here are original. But I decided, since I do and I was telling you this earlier, since a lot of the performing I do is not of my original music, or it's like a mix.
Mhm.
It's a mix of covers, mostly classic rock, and my original stuff. And people would be like, "Well, do you have a CD with that other stuff that you sing?" So I picked 5 of my favorite covers that maybe spoke to me or I had really liked over the years, and I stuck those on here. And then the rest is mine. But there's a couple of piano songs on this too, and I also have some session musicians in the back of this. There's some drums and some electric guitar.
Cool.
So that's my cat. I don't know. I was going to say I think this is the one I'm the most proud of, but you're always, I think I'm always the most proud of the one I did the most recently.
Right.
You know?
Well, I mean, it's a journey through your life.
It's
a musical journey through your life.
It is a musical journey through
you
my
know,
life.
and then you have it in writing as well.
Yes.
So, do you have any special events that you're going to be at where people can come see you?
Yes. This is not a place where people normally show up to listen to music, but the Hershey Medical Center has music in their lobby, in their main lobby, like a lot. Mm-hmm. And they hire, some people volunteer, but they'll hire professional people to come in. They've got a really nice piano in their lobby, and so the first and second Friday of every month, I'm playing piano in the medical center lobby from 3:30 to 5:30.
Oh, that's cool.
And there's, if you have, I've actually had a couple people come in and listen because they're chairs and it's comfortable and nobody cares.
Right.
You know, it's just that you gotta park in the parking garage and then you gotta walk all the way over to the medical center. And it's basically for the patients and the staff.
Right.
You know, and the patients' families. And I've gotten so many lovely compliments from people just saying, oh, thank you so much, you know, or, oh, I came in and I was really stressed and I heard you playing and it just made me feel so much better. And that's why they do it.
Right.
That's why they do it. It's really wonderful. And part of the reason I got the gig is when I was doing chemo, you know, the cancer center is really close to the main lobby, and I'd come in and I'd hear somebody playing the piano, and once I went over and looked and I thought two things. I thought, one, man, that's really nice. How pleasant to hear this, you know, when I'm about to go get this hideous infusion. And two, I thought, how can I get this gig?
Exactly. How can I do that?
How can I do that?
Okay, excellent.
So I have one gig coming up for guitar, which is at the Hershey Farmers Market.
Okay.
And those are all posted. I think it says events or schedule or calendar or something on my website. At the beginning of every month, I post where I'm going to be and what I'm doing. Perfect. But that includes the performing, but it also includes other stuff, which I'll tell you about now.
Perfect.
So once a month, I do a salt and sound meditation. So you go to the salt room. This is Salt Effects out in Colonial Park. You go for a regular salt session, which is 45 minutes long, but during that salt session, I do like a sound meditation. Nice. Yeah, it's real. People
very
love
nice.
it.
Sharon Musio mentions that. She says, you're an awesome sound healer. Your sound immersions at Salt FX are amazeballs.
Amazeballs.
Amazeballs. Well, thank you, Sharon. Yeah, who came? Ricky. Ricky. Yeah, she came last week.
Excellent.
And she was really appreciative too, which meant a lot to me because I have a lot of respect for Ricky.
Absolutely.
You know. Absolutely. So I do that once a month. I do the second Sunday meditations with Lana Ryder. Those are in Lancaster.
They're amazing as well.
Yes, they are. I wish I could just come and not do anything and just. But you know what? It's not the same when you just sit and meditate. But if I spend 45 minutes or so, like playing the bowls and the drums and I'm pretty relaxed at the end. I'm pretty like.
You seemed like it at that last one. Pretty chill.
Yeah, because you're in that zone. So I do that.
Ricky is watching, and she said Salt and Sound is fantastic.
Wonderful.
All caps.
All caps.
I think that's all I've got going on right now.
No, it isn't.
What? What'd I forget?
We can think of one other thing.
Who's watching, Sharon? What do you think?
Oh well, I'm good. I will be at the Spirit of Oneness. But you're right because I'm going to perform.
Yes. I'm so glad I'm here. I'm so glad you're here too.
Oh, I keep forgetting that we have this thing. So, and I think it's on Saturday morning.
10:30. I think it's 10 or 10:30.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Lana Ryder and me and some of her other proteges are all going to do some singing and chanting. It's called what's it called? The Sacred Female Vocal. Something
It's
like
going to
that.
be amazing.
Yeah, it's going to be amazing. We did it. We actually did it during one of the second Sunday meditations, and people really liked it.
Yeah. It's at Spirit of Oneness.
Yes, it's the Spirit of Oneness,
on October 5th.
Yes, which is.
But you guys are there all weekend.
Yes, you guys are there all weekend.
Yeah, we're there all weekend. Just
mini
with a table.
sessions.
And we'll be doing mini sound sessions and that sort of thing.
Yes.
But I will post that on my website too.
Excellent.
Just as a performance thing.
Good. Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, so as we wrap up, do you have any pearls of wisdom? We have a lot of people that watch this searching
Mhm.
You know, they're new to the whole spiritual thing. They're figuring things out, and then we have people that have been at it for a while and struggling.
Right.
Do you have any pearls of wisdom for them?
Well, I have lots of little ones, but as
Yes, you
evidenced
do.
by the books. Well, let me say this, because I'm not. If I thought about this for a couple of days, I'd probably come up with something really profound.
Or as soon as, you know, we end the interview, a lot of people are like,
"Oh,
"Oh, I should have said this!"
Right. But I will say this, because this is something I learned on my path during cancer. And I think I sort of touched on this earlier. You know, all of these things that I have started doing, like meditating regularly and doing guided imagery and affirmations and keeping up with energy work, and sometimes I do. I mean, during all of my treatments, I did self-Reiki when I didn't have somebody else do it, or when I couldn't afford to have somebody else do it. And because you can't do that every week.
Right.
It gets prohibitive. But what I believed was that if you keep up with this, it will become a way of life, and it'll seem weird if you don't do it. And that, in fact, has happened. Part of me was afraid that after I got through all of my treatment, I'd be like, yeah, I don't really feel like working out today, or oh, I'll meditate tomorrow, or you know, I can do self-Reiki on Saturday, or so, you know.
Right.
And the truth is, I did it so regularly that it did become just a way of life. And and it's one of the reasons when you said, like, what do you have? Do you have any obstacles or, you know, challenges? And I feel like, no, I'm actually doing all the stuff I said I was going to do for many years. But to turn that into advice, I might say, you know, just if you're trying to do a new thing, or, you know, trying to like meditate, or trying to find your spirituality, find a time or a you know, place that you can do whatever that thing is, and make it a regular thing. So that, because, you know, when I first started, well, I've been meditating as long as I can remember, but, you know, and on some years I didn't do it very often, but when I started doing it regularly, after a couple of weeks, I started noticing that my meditations were getting deeper, you know, and that I was like, because, you know, I'll sit down and my brain will, you know, and I'll think, you know, I'm just going to sit here until that all goes away, and I'll just wait, you know, and it does eventually, and then I get, you know, but what I discovered was the more I did it, the quicker that would happen, you know, so stick with it, just stick with it, because
love yourself enough to make that commitment.
Yeah, because the benefits are wonderful.
Excellent.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much.
This was extremely informative.
Oh,
there is so much to you that, I mean, we know we are familiar with one another, but I always get so excited to do these interviews because we get to know you on a deeper level.
Right.
So thank you for being so open and willing to share.
Thank you.
Yeah, this was
my pleasure.
Fun.
Thanks everybody for watching.
We just want to remind you that there will be no show next Wednesday because next weekend is Spirit of Oneness, and we're going to be there all weekend shooting live video, interviews for the vendors that are there. And sometime on Friday, we're thinking around 5-ish, Sharon and I are going to sit down, Sharon Muzio and I are going to sit down, and she's going to give you highlights for the event and all the information that you need to know in order to come.
Awesome.
So keep an eye out for us next weekend. And
well, not this coming weekend.
Not this coming weekend, October 4th, 5th, and 6th. You'll be hearing from us because 4th will be Sharon's interview. Just a brief one. We won't do a full hour one. If you want to see that, go to YouTube and check out her interview from last year. And then Saturday and Sunday. We'll be running interviews pretty much consistently from 9:30 in the morning to 5 on Saturday, and then 9:30 to 4 on Sunday. So you can get to know all the vendors there.
And stop by and say hi.
Exactly. Stop by and say hi to Julie, and she'll be with Lana, who's been on the show before, and Deborah's been on the show. So you get to meet them in person. Check them out. Thank you so much for joining us, and don't forget you're awesome.